Welcome to lesson 4. In this lesson, we'll go over how to identify support and resistance. There are many ways to define support and resistance. Resistance is a supply zone that is above the current price, where there was previously a rejection. Over here, and over here, for example. And support is below the current price where there was a bounce, for example, right here. We can also call this a demand zone. Firstly, these zones can be established with trend lines. Anywhere on a trend line can be support or resistance depending on if it's above or below the current price. Here's a trend line that I drew right here in white. So right now, if we're going to be looking at trend lines as a form of resistance, then the next resistance zone would be right here. To make things simpler, let's just look at resistance for now. When support is broken through, it becomes resistance. We can see that concept illustrated right here, where this was a support zone that was broken through, and now it's been tested as resistance in this area. Another way to find resistance is a previous resistance level. You can look further back in time to these levels. For example, we have one right here. We also have another one right here, and another one right here, and so on and so forth. So I've put green horizontal lines to establish these on the chart. Moving averages also act as a form of resistance. The higher the moving average, the stronger the resistance. You can see that right here where the price had trouble moving above the 200 moving average, but as soon as it broke out from above, look how it exploded up, came down and tested it as support and continued up all the way until the next resistance zone. You can also see that happening right now. I'll remove the drawings so we can get a closer look at other forms of resistance. Indicators that plot standard deviations like the Bollinger Bands also act as a form of resistance, although they're not as strong. Notice how the price bounces and rejects in between these upper and lower bands. We can make use of this information in one of our next strategies. We can use these bands as support and resistance. If there are no levels of resistance or support in sight, we can use the Fibonacci tool to establish them on a chart. Notice that when the price broke through the 618 right here, that it couldn't get back up, it got rejected as resistance right here. And lastly, round numbers also act as resistance like 50, 100, 1000, etc. It's the same for support except those levels are below the current price. Those are called demand zones. Look at any chart and identify these levels. They're also known as pivot points, because the price is changing in those areas. Another pro tip about support and resistance zones is that the higher the time frame the zone is established in, the more significant it is. Before going into a trade, you need to know about the concept of multi-timeframe analysis. This is when you plot the support and resistance that are coming off of all the different time frames. So for example, if you're going into a trade on the 5-minute or the 15-minute chart, you may not be aware that there's a resistance up ahead on the weekly, which is a really strong resistance. What we do is we first zoom out. I like to start with the weekly time frame and we start plotting our support and resistance. So the first one I could see here is we have a pivot point here, a rejection, which became support right here where it bounced off. We'd hit Alt-H. And there's our first line. I could also see another one right here. Here's a rejection, which became support over here, so that would be another line. And then we can see a resistance right here, because there's a rejection right here and in the exact same spot right here. Just go ahead and hit Alt-H again. Now let's go on to the daily time frame. We're zooming in. I can see a downtrend forming right here, so we're going to plot that as well. Remember that these should be touching the wicks. Also, we can see a lot of resistance here in this zone. And then it happens again over here. And then it happens again over here, and it happens again over here. So this would be a nice zone of resistance. And then zooming in a little bit closer to where the trade would be at right now, we can see that there is a resistance zone right here. And then we can zoom in a little more. Here's the 4 hour. As we start getting into lower time frames, we can start plotting boxes that represent ranges, because support and resistance aren't always just one line and one price. They're actually in a range. So to do that, we go over here to where the brush tool is and go to the rectangle. Just draw it like this. Since this range is beneath the price, that would be a support zone. So I like to put those in green and go over here to templates. And then you can create a template. I'll be showing how to do that in another video. And we have another range of resistance up here. So now we can go into a lower time frame. Here's the 1 hour. And we can see here that price bounced off twice. So that's another support zone. We can mark that with Alt H. So now that we have all of these different support and resistance zones plotted from different time frames, you can see exactly where each support and resistance zone is, even though we're on a lower time frame. So for example, here, we can see that we're forming a bearish pattern. We're making lower highs, and we're forming what seems to be a small head and shoulders pattern. We know that we have a support zone here. So if we see the price break below and we have other indicators showing bearish signals, then over here we could take a short signal, and then our target would be the next support. And we could zoom out. See, this would be our take profit 1 zone, and then the second one would be down here in the next support zone. Now open up any chart and start by the weekly time frame. Go ahead and plot support and resistance. Then go ahead and zoom in, go down to the daily time frame. Continue to do that, and then go further, go to the 4 hour time frame, and notice that sometimes support and resistance, they don't adhere to these strict lines. They could also be ranges. In that case, you would draw a box. Go down again to the 1 hour, the 30 minute, even the 15 minute, go down to the 5 minute. This is the time frame that I personally like to trade on. Even go down to the 1 minute. It may not be necessary for trading, but this is just to practice and get in the groove of plotting support and resistance and trend lines and viewing how the price reacts. It may bounce, it may reject, it may get stuck, it may fake out. But keep practicing. This is a really good exercise, and if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message.